Hi, I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist, and welcome to teachmetotalk.com's Therapy Tip of the Week. Are you looking for a tool that can help parents understand how important imitation is and how important it is that imitation develops along a continuum, and that children don't, when they're late talking, just start out at imitating words and everything is fine. Imitation actually moves along a very sequential, very logical progression. And so rarely do we see a child who's not talking who is already imitating. So imitation is the core skill that so many late talking toddlers are missing. And so I have a great tool. It's actually from my therapy manual, Building Verbal Imitation Skills in Toddlers, that is such a great visual for helping parents and therapists walk through this process to understand how imitation develops in toddlers. And let me just say again, one more time, it doesn't start at the word level. Imitation actually starts way back in infancy and back again as toddlers are beginning to move toward that first birthday, when they begin to first imitate actions with objects. So what does that mean? It means that a child can see you take two blocks and bang them together, and he tries to do that too. Or see, he sees you shake a rattle and he tries to do that too. Or pat on the table and he does that too. Or pound with a hammer and he does that too. So imitation means that a child sees you do something at this level, level 1, an action with an object, and then he tries to copy what you're doing. Guys, this is how imitation starts. And so we will never, ever, ever hear a child blurt out words. And again, this is without outliers with motor skill issues. But he will never begin to talk until he has mastered these earlier, easier levels of imitation. So that's level 1, imitating actions with objects. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, so I'll just throw it in here now. How a child imitates at 18 months is the very biggest predictor of his language skills at 36 months. So it is a huge, huge correlator between how a kid is talking again at 18 months. It's not the number of words he's saying at 18 months. It's how well he's imitating actions that he sees other people do. And so super, super important piece of information for telling us what his longer term outcome at 3, if you want to think about it 18 months later, is going to be. So that's level 1 with imitating, and there are actually 8 levels that we're going to talk about. Level 2 here is communicative gestures. So how well does a child imitate things like waving bye-bye, or like pointing, or like shaking your head for yes and no? How well does he do that? Well, for this level 2 imitation, it actually doesn't even start with those gestures. It starts with imitating body movements. So something like jumping, or something like pretending to kick in the air, something like marching or dancing. How well will the child start to imitate these big body movements out here first, and then we refine it a little bit and get into that gestural level where he does start to do things like clap, or things like blow kisses, or things like even like giving a 5. So that would be level 2 with imitation. There's kind of a little hybrid or a little in-between step here as well with level 2, is how well will the child then start to imitate some hand motions for songs or finger plays. So we already talked about clapping, and what a great way that is to get early imitation going at this body movement level. But how well will he do things like patty cake, or things like itsy bitsy spider, or things like if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, or wave your arms, or pat your tummy, or stomp your feet. You know, those are great, great ways to help a child begin to imitate at that body action, body movement level. Level 3 is a little bit controversial for speech language pathologists, but I want to go ahead and mention it. We are moving up a child's body and getting closer and closer to his mouth. So how well can a child imitate nonverbal actions with your face or with your mouth? Now, research tells us that these skills are not always as closely connected as we like to think they are. So meaning that there's not always that this is definitively required before a child begins to talk. But I've included this in my 8 levels of imitation because there are some toddlers who really do not understand that they have a mouth and that they can use it purposefully. So if we're looking at this strictly for helping them learn how to purposefully imitate, and again, it doesn't even have to be completely with their mouths. It can just be that they get wide eyes like you do, or that they are puffing their cheeks out really, really big, or anything that they're going to do with their mouth. So a pucker for a kiss, or clicking their tongue, or a little raspberry sound there, anything like that. We're wiggling their tongues from side to side, any kind of nonverbal action that they are doing with their face or their mouth. And again, this level is not always required for late talkers, but for some kids that you have tried and tried and tried as therapists to get them to imitate, and they are just not there yet, this might be a level that you kind of back up to and see where you can how much you can get there, and what kinds of new skills that you can get a child to imitate there at that level, at level 3. Level 4 is bumps up a little bit. Now we're taking these same kind of easy early mouth movements and we're putting some vocalizations with them. So will a kid fake cough like after you? And that's something that typically developing babies start to do, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. They love that little game. Will they pant like a dog? Will they pretend like they're snoring? Will they do a shh for be quiet? Will they growl? Kind of an early animal sound there. So vocalizations in play, and these were the sounds that really defy transcription. You can't really transcribe when a child is doing, a fake cough, but it is a vocalization, and it is an important step on helping a child learn how to imitate and then move toward talking. So that was level 4. So we want to teach a child how to imitate at that level. The next level, level 5, is exclamatory words. So we bumped it up just a little bit. And again, this is where we can really start to spell. We can really write what sounds like a word. So when a kid says quack like a duck, or woof, woof like a dog, we can spell that. And so that even includes other little exclamatory words like uh-oh and wow and whee. Those kinds of fun little words. And a lot of times as a speech language pathologist, we will evaluate a child, and a parent will say, how many words does he use? And they say none. But then we go back and start therapy several weeks later, and the child's doing all kinds of animal sounds. And we get really excited because we think that we taught that child that. And mom says, no, he's been doing that for weeks. And we say, why didn't you tell me? And she doesn't realize that those are real words, because we use the same consonants and vowels and the same phonemes, if we're doing phonetic transcription there, to record those words. And so those words really do count, and really it's a critical in-between step for so many late talking toddlers that we get them to vocalize in that way. So those early play sounds, especially with exclamatory words. The next level of imitation that we want to see with children is that they start to imitate words in context. So words that are called verbal routines. That means that they can finish a familiar phrase that they hear all the time. So it might be that you are singing a song like twinkle twinkle little and a child fills in star. Or it could be that he says a word when you say ready, set, and he knows to fill in go. So that's what I mean by a verbal routine. Anytime that we use the same sequence of words at the same time, in the same way, for the same activities, we've established a routine there. So when children start to fill in those words, they are getting really, really close to really being able to talk and really being able to imitate more functional words. And that's our next level of imitation. It's level 7, where we finally get to the point where a child is copying what you say. And again, can you see, just by looking at this chart, so many of us, even as speech language pathologists, mistakenly start way up here. But look at every single thing that had to come in first before we could realistically expect that a child would be able to imitate those single words. And then lastly, we're at level 8, where a child imitates short phrases. So things like bye-bye mama, or more please, or even a holistic phrase like I did it, or I got it. Those things come in at level 8. But really only after a child has gotten a pretty high degree of mastery with these easier, earlier levels. Now, occasionally we will have an outlier where kids start to do a lot of these holistic phrases, but a lot of times that's not functional. We've got to, even with those kinds of kids, back it up and teach them to imitate at these earlier, easier levels. And I could talk about this chart all day. Actually, I've written this whole book about helping parents and therapists learn how to teach imitation from the ground up, because, guys, it's your very best way of making sure that a child learns to be a functional communicator. First, teach them how to be a consistent imitator. All right, you can get more information about this at my website, teachmetotalk.com. You can get it also from this great therapy manual, Building Verbal Imitation Skills in Toddlers. It's also available for parents. So if you're a parent trying to work on these kinds of things at home, even before you ever see a speech language pathologist, it's a fantastic tool that I want to be sure that you know about. And if you're a therapist, you can also get this course in a continuing education format on DVD as a 6-hour course with ASHA credit for speech language pathologist. All right, that's it for today. I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech language pathologist, and thank you so much for joining me for teachmetotalk.com's Therapy Tip of the Week.